President Phil. It's my pleasure to introduce Stephen John, whose talk today is DV Fiber, Closing Vermont's Great Digital Divide. Stephen spent much of his time in education and music. He served as the board president for the Vermont Association for Middle Level Education. He was chair of the Vermont Standards Board for Professional Education and is retired as the superintendent of Wyndham Central Supervisory Union. His life includes singing in the Blanche Moise Chorale, the Brattleboro Concert Choir, and elsewhere. He serves currently as a trustee and treasurer of the Brattleboro Music Center. For the town of Marlborough, he's served as town auditor, town moderator, and chair of the Development Review Board. Related to his talk today, he's been working on bridging the digital divide, and as such is chair of the Marlborough Committee for Universal Broadband. He represents Marlborough on the Deerfield Valley Communications Union Board and is vice chair of the DV Fiber Board. There's a lot to unpack in those last three bits, which I'm sure Stephen will be doing in the next portion of the meeting. But the final thing I'll also say about Stephen is that he, as a high school student, received a Rotary scholarship. So Stephen, over to you.
I see. Oh, there's the unmute. Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's pretty exciting for me, actually. As was revealed, my first Rotary experience was at a Rotary Club meeting, God, many years ago, a lot of years ago, probably as a junior or senior in high school. So anyway, it wasn't all new to me, the introductory activities here preceding my presentation. I've enjoyed a number of meetings with my uncle, John Borgwat, too, out in California. But move right along. I have a little PowerPoint presentation here, and I will not attempt to reread it. I think I'll try to send the deck I'll share my screen, and I'll attempt to send the deck to Carla, perhaps. I know that Eric is on the Communications Committee for DV Fiber, and that's how I think I got kind of connected, had the opportunity to come and present to you. I think the emphasis should be, though, of what's the latest and what questions you may have about this very unique organization. A communications union district was established by law as an opportunity for towns to form such a district for the sole purpose of addressing, improving, and guaranteeing, ensuring that we had a better connection to the internet for all people and all residents and all locations in the member towns. We've grown to 24 towns, including 2 in Bennington, Stamford, and Reedsboro, and 1 in Windsor County, Weston. And other than that, it's pretty much throughout Wyndham County, except for those towns served by VTEL with fiber. That is Rockingham, Grafton, and to some degree Athens. So I just have to click share my screen, and then you'll see this PowerPoint, I think. This is in Google Docs, and I'm not familiar with that as much as others, but if you have any trouble, just somebody signal me or yell out, because I have limited internet at my home, and this may be a challenge for my access. But we're all having an adventure with these remote meetings and learning a lot about technology that we probably wouldn't have gotten involved with if we hadn't been obliged to do so. Anyway, here we go. Oh, that didn't help. Share sound, that's good. Desktop, that's what I want to do. What's the matter with desktop? Google Chrome. Oh dear. They're not liking me here. Will this help? That didn't work, right? When I Zoom with my chorale, it always works. I think my wife's going to come and try to help me out here. I just want to share my, you know what, I'm going to just keep talking here until we get technical assistance here. I have this thing open on my desktop, but it's not being shared with you. Okay, so we started out with 5 towns in Windham County that at town meeting last year voted to form a communications union district. They were towns that were particularly needy. Not surprisingly, that was the more rural towns around Brattleboro, Marlboro, Whitingham, Halifax, Stamford, Wardsboro, and Stratton were the first 5. Then Reedsboro joined, and since then we have 24 member towns. I guess I'll keep talking here while my wife tries to. Yeah, but it's not sharing. See, this is unfortunate. Yeah. Well, anyway, so yeah. So we are. This is my wife Kimi Hasagawa. In case if you've been, if you ever went to an orchestra concert or something, you may be familiar with her.
Has the chair, has the host given Stephen permission to share the screen? His screen.
Yep, he's nodding. Yep. Well, as I said, I'll send the deck, but don't worry, I can answer questions and talk quite a long time, as probably Ron Staley knows.
I don't know.
So let's skip it. Okay, let's get back here and forget that. Just cancel. Let's get back to people. Okay, people are more important than our PowerPoint. So one thing you may not realize about the town's predicaments that are rurally located and have very few people per mile along a road is that, of course, the private sector is always eager to serve people, but they're also eager to make sure there's some profit motive involved. It's a sustainable business model. And we don't provide a sustainable business model for the incumbent carriers, providers to serve our rural towns. So the opportunity presented by our legislature, which is unique across the country, is that towns could combine and they could eventually qualify for revenue bond funding to be able to support the ongoing work of connection and the infrastructure that have to be built. But the big problem was capital investment to begin with. And we had a business study done and a survey done by Windham Regional Commission that hired consultants to find that, yes, Windham County could be a feasible business model for such a infrastructure, including the capital expense. It would take approximately 10 years to get that built without borrowing a little bit at a time, and we would have to resort to the private sector for private placement loans or charitable giving to get started until we got to a revenue bond qualification. I presume all of you know the difference between revenue and capital bonds, but if you have a question, you can ask it later. So that was the good news because we were feasible and financially sustainable. The bad news that the incremental build out was so slow that it was looking pretty, discouraging. Better than nothing, because after all, we've mostly waited, at least in my neighborhood, for 20 years to get internet, broadband, high speed, and it hasn't happened. No matter how hard the local committee has tried to make that happen. In fact, we put out an RFP and tried to get private providers to build it in Marlboro, but we couldn't manage the capital expense. So the CUD is unique because the members of these towns are not financially liable for any indebtedness. And the CUD can contract to have the infrastructure built, and that's what we intend to do. We issued an RFP, a request for proposals, and had upwards of 12 respondents. Proposals received from the private sector providers, and we have been narrowing that down and been in negotiations with the most promising proposals. And we actually met last night as a board to consider a memorandum of understanding, and recessed until 5 o'clock today to come to a decision on that. So stay tuned. The news may break pretty quickly about what the plans are for a public-private partnership that would accomplish the task of connecting all locations in our 24 towns. We do have a website, dvfiber.net, and you'll be able to see something about all the towns and about our principles, our values, and our commitment to making sure that everyone, no matter where they live in our region, in our district, are provided with high-speed internet via fiber. That's our commitment, and that's why we're called DV Fiber. Deerfield Valley is the DV, and that came from the first 5 towns that we had to have a name to get the towns to vote for it. So that's what we came up with. I think I've talked a lot. Well, you're probably interested in money. The total project would be probably close to 50 million. And the good news is that with the ARPA money being funneled through the state and allocated through the state and through Governor Scott's support and the legislature's initiative, particularly I want to commend Laura Sibilia and the House Technology Committee, Energy and Technology Committee, have secured funds for the CUDs, and there are now 9 CUDs across the state of Vermont. And we have issued an RFP, as I said, and now we're about to make a decision. That funding makes it possible for us to accelerate from 10 years to hopefully much less than 5 years to get this done. And maybe for many people, it'll be much shorter than that. The reason that is because then we can have capital that is interest-free, and we're not carrying the charges for repayment of debt, and get our infrastructure sufficiently built in a sector to secure revenue stream, an established revenue stream that will justify or at least make it possible to get a revenue bond funding to build out to the rest. Our priority is the least served first. However, if our engineering design and what do you call it, practical compromises oblige us to reach other areas as well en route to those locations, certainly that will be part of the puzzle we put together in the future. Questions? I'll mention one thing. Brattleboro is a member town. They were key. They're one of the first towns to join, and I think the primary motivation there by the select board of Brattleboro was that despite being very well cabled and now fiber being provided by CCI in Brattleboro, there are over 700 locations that are not included in that network. Well, it's a pretty quiet crowd out there, but I'm a patient fellow. Oh, Ron, yeah, what do you got for me?
Hey, Stephen. So
Hi.
I've got a question and a comment. Do you know what percentage the state is funding this program of the total cost?
Yeah. Here's what we do know. We do know that we've already received some minor grants to get going administratively, and for legal counsel, because we have already been in negotiations. But the first amount of money would come through on House 360 this year, and I think there's allocated around 21 million statewide. But this law also signed by the governor enacts the formation of a broadband authority statewide that has 5 members, and they're appointed by different political people. And I won't go into that detail. You can go to the law if you want, but when that gets, that's going to be stood up, and then it's going to have an executive director and a way of administering and figuring out how best to invest that. Well, the governor wanted 250 million. I think it ended up in the law being 150 million statewide to support the efforts of CUDs or incumbents working in conjunction with CUDs to extend service. And the new standard for Vermont's service is 100 symmetrical, that is 100 megabits per second up and 100 megabits per second down, Cable does very well down, but most of you, even on cable, don't get anywhere near 100 megabits up. And the up is really important for this kind of work that we're doing right now. So that's, yeah. Well, anyway, so the immediate amount is the governor has also advocated that this be apportioned by the number of unserved or underserved locations in each
Great.
district. So, well, another financial issue to remind me about GMP. So that means about 2.1 million for our CUD. And that is actually enough to really get the engineering and design for the whole district established and the pole studies for the initial towns that we've built. One thing I want to keep the public aware of is that within a communications union district, our decisions about where to build and when to build and is determined largely by road and geography, not by borders of towns, except insofar as our outside perimeter. The state border, for example. That's yet to be determined. But it is a little bit unusual to have this kind of representative government. Each select board appoints a representative. That representative has one vote on the board. The governing board has therefore 24 votes right now, and that's how we proceed to make all decisions.
Okay.
Let's get back one other financial thing. There is a very strong support from Green Mountain Power to subsidize, they call it a tariff or something, but anyway, it's about $2,000 for the make ready to locations that are unserved. So that will amount eventually to a significant amount of money, not anywhere near what is necessary to do the job, but it shows a coordination between, the utility and Green Mountain Power owns 95% of the poles in our district, which makes the pole ready. We have to get the poles ready to handle that fiber, make sure there's a spot on the pole to put it that's safe, and that is all part of the preliminary design.
Now, the other thing is I'd like to make a brag for Stephen.
Oh.
It was in the mid 1990s when I was principal at Leland and Gray. We coaxed Stephen to become the middle school principal, and we worked together for many years. And then when Stephen became superintendent, I was superintendent in Brattleboro. We were colleagues in the Southeast Superintendents Association. So it's great to see you, and thanks for all your work. And say hi to Kimi for me.
Yeah, thanks for yours, and say hi to Gail and the kids too.
Right.
Are you off someplace in Florida, or where are you?
I'm right in my front porch.
Oh, well, good for you. Looks pretty nice.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ron. Anybody
George,
else?
I think George Anthony has a question.
Sure.
Thanks for coming, Stephen. Back of the envelope calculation sounds to me like on a county resident basis, we're talking low four figures per person. Is the Wyndham Regional Commission study, did that suggest that the way that ultimately you're going to be able to pay for this is by monthly fees from users, or
Right.
where's the money going to come from?
Yeah, right. Thank you. I left out that very important part. The way any bond repayment or funding comes back is through the payment of the customers, and so that's why we're limited to a revenue bond in terms of borrowing from the state's point of view, because if we have established revenue through the customers, right, that are providing service to, then that can ensure that the bond will be repaid. And that was really what the feasibility study business model was basing the work on, and assuming that we would have to borrow at a high interest rate the initial capital. That's why the incremental 10-year approach was, quite extended. And why now? Because of, there's some bright clouds in this COVID storm. At least in bright spots, that make it possible now to have public investment. And our goal at DV Fiber as a board is to make sure that we secure the business model for the long range future, address the immediate need, and make sure that we're able to provide for future development needs. I mean, if there were lines that needed to be extended in the future, this is not just a one-shot deal project. This is something that we see 20, 30 years. We see the Communications Union District continuing to be a public authority and owner of this infrastructure, a very valuable asset that can provide service and provide it at the most economic means level to our customers, because we don't have, except for our potential indebtedness, we don't have a lot of stock payers, stockholders to provide a margin for. And our contract to do the work will be with, on a competitive basis with private sector that will be paid accordingly, but it will be certainly at what appears to be in the long term a very cost-effective way to reach everybody. We hope that, in fact, the initial rates that we might be obliged to charge would decline over time, depending on our indebtedness, and depending, of course, on what market rates are. So we
Thanks. I think it's great.
That was looked at very carefully to make sure that we were able to, the customers were able to pay a competitive rate and ensure our financial stability.
Phil?
Steve, hi, nice to see you.
Hey, Phil.
Hello there. Have you talked to Adam Grenold and the folks at BDCC? Because certainly what you're talking about can lead to significant economic growth over the long term in the region.
Yes. Actually, we presented to them early, well over 3 months ago, as I recall. Ann Manwaring, the chair, and I presented to them at a similar meeting to this. And they were very, they had good questions, and they were very interested. We haven't yet heard, or maybe we haven't been in the position to hear of any specific initiative on their part. There was an initial grant that did help us with some, very small funding issues regarding setting up we have to be set up as a business. This is unusual. The CUD is also going to be operating as a business, a private, in some ways, a private corporation, because we have to be financially stable, and we are not dependent, nor in any way able to access any taxes or any tax base. It's all based on customers' use fee. So I hope that answered the question, but we certainly have. And if you have any influence there, or have any interest, I know that this is very important that for our region, that we have we are an attractive place for people to telecommute, to have their homes and raise their families and still sustain business, perhaps at great distances. So we're looking forward to your support. Thanks.
Thank you.
Stephen, I have a quick question. I noticed for the last several months, 6, 8 months, maybe even longer, when I come to work early in the morning, that there are several of the cable trucks hanging out at the hotel behind the 99. Is that part of the infrastructure build out that you're talking about, or are they servicing another community right now?
Yeah, no, we have not yet signed a contract nor initiated any, nor have we received the funds yet from the state to complete that transaction, or at least support that effort. You wouldn't see, just so the public is not too surprised, you wouldn't see anything happening that you could attribute to DV Fiber initiative until you hear some public announcements. And we don't want to have people with unrealistic expectations. This kind of thing doesn't happen overnight. The engineering and study and design and make ready probably would take at least, assuming we can sign a contract soon to get it done, through December. And then the next time you would see something specifically attributed to DV Fiber's infrastructure build out would be, early next year. You might see some pole study work, people looking out at poles and so forth. Actually, I've gone around with binoculars and looked at poles and tried to figure out what that was about. Great adventure, waste of my time, but great adventure. But what you've seen is primarily from two sources. Comcast is eager to extend their service, and then that's CCI, Consolidated Communications, certainly has put down a lot of new fiber there in Brattleboro, and they have received venture investment, venture capitalist infusion of funds up to 450 million to connect 1 million homes in New England to fiber. So they're trying to, this is all public, they're trying to take advantage of their copper infrastructure, telephone, and lash the fiber to it so they can provide better service to people that are presumably already their customers, or take customers away from the cable companies, because fiber is a much superior communications connection. Hope that I've run into the same traffic jams on Route 9 here, and in fact, the new fiber has been laid all the way across Route 9, as far as I can see, when I went to Bennington. But there's a lot of fiber in Windham County going east-west and north-south, but it is owned by First Light and CCI, and there is a limited amount that's owned by Velco to help the Green Mountain Power, the power grid, connect different sources of electric generation throughout the state. And that's all part of the puzzle in terms of engineering, which fiber highways are already in place that we could use, or what do we build on our own.
Stephen,
Very,
I wonder if you could just highlight what makes DV Fiber unique or different from the common carriers. Like,
Oh yeah, okay. Well, we don't have any stockholders. It's just the people who have influence and determine what our decisions are, business decisions and otherwise, in terms of our own mission and principles, are entirely based on the public, on any citizen influencing the select board to appoint a capable representative to pull for their views. That's quite different. Nobody involved is getting paid. All of the board is volunteer. All of the officers are volunteer. We have contracted for service for an accountant, and we have contracted service for legal counsel. That to date, we expect that as we get to the building phase, we would want to have contracted for a clerk of the works to represent the CUD, and perhaps some contracted administrative assistant, director, or something like that. We don't want to employ, up to now, we don't want to have any employees. This is not a company that employs things. We are what is called a municipal corporation, which is not really a corporation and not really a town. It's a different entity, and that's what makes this so challenging, exciting for board members. Is that we're making a path that hasn't been followed before. That is laid out by the law. And even the statute includes when we have our annual meetings and what officers we have to have, and lays out what happens in case of bankruptcy and all that. So it's a really well thought out path, but it is an adventure. And the other thing is that we don't have a profit margin. We don't have that need. So it's conceivable that we can provide really excellent service for fiber and well be worth the investment by the public in terms of service and longevity. And we also will control, as a board, the customer service. If we're not happy with the customer service, we'll terminate the contract with the provider, and we will bid out for other providers to come take over the the operation. And but there are two aspects. Operation is technical, and then ISP is internet service provider. And both those can be the same or could be separately contracted. But that's where I'm really enthusiastic about this being an effort worth it because of the long-term value to the public. And of course, the private sector for business.
Any other questions or comments for Stephen? If not, Stephen, thank you so much for
Thank you. We
a very
appreciate
interesting program. We appreciate you being here today.
appreciate your support, and I love all the waving hands. We do that on our remote meetings a lot too. And thank you so much. Don't hesitate to contact me online. You can go to dvfiber.net and find any contact information. And stay tuned there because I anticipate there may be a press release as early as tomorrow.
Ooh.
So yeah, we're really we've been at this since April of last year. So and I do want to thank any of you who've been involved or supportive in any way, but also all the volunteers from all our towns who have been inspired to put in the effort and the time. And we find that that's a great advantage over the private sector because they usually work 9 to 5, but we work 24/7.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
And thank you, everybody, for joining today. Do have an enjoyable and safe 4th of July weekend, and we will adjourn the meeting.
Here.